All right, so hey everyone, please keep yourselves muted. We are recording this program. So after this presentation, please visit our YouTube channel, hit subscribe and smash that like button, click the bell to get all our new content. That really helps us out. And stay until the end for more info on donating to AAM. So welcome to another educational and inspiring AAM program. This entitled Fish Feel, Advocating Effectively for Fishes. In this program, you gain a greater understanding of fishes and learn how to effectively advocate for them as animal rights activists. Earth is home for more than 30,000 known species of fish, which is more than all the other species of vertebrate animals combined. Fish are amazingly diverse and truly fascinating. Fish are fast learners with long-term memories and a keen sense of time. They recognize other individuals, can keep track of complex social relationships, and work cooperatively with other species. Fish are inquisitive, perceptive, and personable. Sadly, fish are the most misrepresented, misperceived, and exploited animals. My name is Michelle Granberg. I'm your moderator. I'm a mentor and team member with Animal Activism Mentorship. I'm located in New Jersey, and I've been a vegan and activist for over 6 years. Our mission at AAM is to empower activists to boldly act and equip them with what they need to fight for animal liberation. AAM is a free multinational program supporting new and fledgling animal rights activists to reach their full potential. Founded in 2020, AAM offers a free 3-month mentorship program, which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. Through one-on-one mentoring, we generate an increased number of effective activists worldwide because we know this movement needs more activists. Additionally, we offer free workshops like this that train and educate our mentors, mentees, and the public on various aspects of AR activism. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour, and we host large-scale in-person activism events around the country. AAM is proud to be fueled by FARM, the Farmed Animal Rights Movement, one of the oldest AR organizations in the country. If you're interested in applying to become a mentor or a mentee, or want to get involved or to donate, please visit our website, animalactivismmentorship.com, and follow both AAM and FARM on social media. So with that, I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter tonight. Mary Finelli is president and founder of Fish Feel, and she chairs the Save the Rays Coalition. Mary is a longtime animal rights activist with a BS in animal science. She has worked with various animal protection organizations, primarily focusing on farmed animals. Mary was the producer of Farmed Animal Watch, a weekly online news digest sponsored by numerous animal protection organizations. Fish Feel is the first organization devoted to promoting the recognition of fish as sentient beings deserving of respect and compassion. Despite fish constituting the largest category of animals used for food, including as farmed animal feed, and despite huge numbers of fish harmed for research, sport, and aquaria, their well-being receives very little attention, even from the animal protection community. Fish Feel primarily serves to help educate the public as to why these animals are deserving of our admiration and appreciation, the immense problems caused by their exploitation, and how we can help them. So, right after this workshop, go ahead and visit fishfeel.org. I will put that in the chat. And now I'm going to pass it over to Mary Finelli. Go ahead, Mary, and you can take it from here.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you all very much for being here. Thank you, especially for your interest and concern for fishes. As you'll see, they are very interesting and amazing and admirable animals, sentient beings, very deserving of our respect and compassion. So go ahead and get started with the slideshow. Okay, can you see that all right, Michelle? Michelle?
No, I can't see it.
No? Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Is the, share screen. Okay.
Share
Is that
screen.
up? Is that good now? Okay.
No, I can't see it.
No. Um,
Now I see it.
no. Okay, good.
Yay.
Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
How's that? Is that, can you see
That's
that?
perfect. Yeah, it's
Okay,
perfect.
very good. All right. This is our logo, and what it shows you just an idea of the very diverse species that make up fishes. There are, and I call them fishes to indicate, well, it's the term that's used when referring to more than one species of fish. And also increasingly, it's used to indicate that fish are unique individuals. Each one is an individual. So many people seem to think of them as some sort of amorphous mass, but each fish is a unique individual with their own personality. And some of the animals that you might not think of as fishes are rays, and sharks are fishes, eels, seahorses. So this just gives you a little idea. And here, this gives you a better idea of just how diverse these animals are. And there's some over 32,000 known species of fishes, and more every year they're discovering new ones. So it's just an amazingly diverse set of animals. And there are so many myths about fishes. One myth is that if you're a vegetarian, you can eat fish. Okay, so that's not true. But there are so many myths about fishes, and so tonight we'll learn a little bit about just how the facts about fishes. For example, people think that it's okay to keep a goldfish in a little bowl because they have such a short-term memory that by the time they get around to where they had been, they'll have forgotten where they were in the first place. But that's so untrue. For goldfish, for example, they've been shown to be able to remember for months or even up to a year, and very possibly longer. There's a study where they were given feeding tubes of certain colors, and a year later they remembered their assigned color feeding tube. So that study only went on for a year, but it's very possible they can remember longer than that. And of course, we remember there are salmon, for example, migrating salmon who remember their way home after being thousands of miles from their home and away for years. They remember how to get back to their home. So they have very long-term memories. This is a philfrin goby, and what they do is they live in tidal pools. So they will be in an area, and while at low tide, they can see what the layout of the land is. I'm sorry, at high tide. And when the tide goes out and they're just in these little puddles, because a puddle might dry out or something, they remember where the larger pools were, and they can hop to the larger pools and to avoid predators or whatever. And just from that little bit of time that they spent memorizing the topography, they can remember that for up to 40 days. So that's really remarkable memory. Example memory. This is an archer fish, and what they do is they use their mouth to shoot insects down from overhanging vegetation for food. And they actually learn by watching other archer fishes, the experienced archer fishers. They can get better at that. And I have a little quote I'd like to read to you about the archer fish. Hunts with a working knowledge of motion, gravity, optics, and fluid dynamics, effortlessly solving problems that might keep a physics student up at night. They use science to give themselves superhuman, or rather superfish, strength. Like the hawkeye of the animal kingdom, they're always on target and never run out of arrows. These fishes can also pick out a human face from 44 different human faces. So they also have a remarkable memory. Tool use. You can imagine how difficult it could be for a fish, an animal who doesn't have hands, to use tools. But this is an example of a tusk fish. And here's this fish is picking up a clamshell, and they'll go a considerable distance to find a suitable rock to break the shell open. So that's a very good example of tool use among fish. Also, it's been relatively recently found that fishes are self-aware. This is a blue streak cleaner wrasse fish, and what they can do is they put a little spot on their throat, which is something that they wouldn't have been able to notice except if they had saw the reflection in a mirror. And these fishes did see the reflection in the mirror and started trying to rub the spot off. You can imagine that's really impressive for an animal who wouldn't ordinarily be seeing their reflection in nature. And that's considered a gold standard, that the mirror, so-called mirror test is considered a gold standard of self-awareness among animals. Relatively few species have passed it. Cultural knowledge, fishes are known to pass knowledge from generation to generation. For example, the younger fishes will follow the older fishes to find the better feeding grounds, that type of thing. And with the fishing industry, or people who fish, they're trying to catch the biggest, oldest fishes, the biggest fishes. And by taking those fish out of the schools, they are taking away that knowledge. So it's very detrimental to the school. There are fishes who are excellent parents. These are stickleback fishes. They make nests, and they'll prepare a nest and lay their eggs, and they'll actually bring oxygen down and fan their fins to oxygenate the eggs. And even once the babies hatch, they will be very protective of them. So excellent parents. There are actually some fishes who do what's called mouth brooding, where they will incubate the eggs in their mouths. And some of these fish will do it, some species will do it for weeks or even months and go without eating. And even once the babies hatch, if a predator comes around, they'll call the babies back into their mouth. So that's really phenomenal parenting. And of course, we know seahorses, another type of fish, they'll also incubate their babies in the pouch, the male seahorses do. Fish cooperation, these are rabbit fishes, and you can see in these different panels, they're both rabbit fishes. And while one is feeding, the other will stand guard, and they'll take turns doing that. So that's cooperation. There's also interspecies cooperation. These are reef fishes, the eel and a grouper. And because the grouper is large, they can't get into some of the crevices in the reef to go after prey. So if they spot prey and they can't get to them, what they'll do is go over to an eel and signal to the eel. They actually like do a little headstand and a little motion, and they'll be quite persistent in trying to get the eel to follow them. And if the eel is game, they'll get up and go with them, and the eel can get into the crevices and either catch the prey in there or chase the prey out for the grouper to catch. And they've been shown to be much more successful hunting together than hunting independently. And another example are octopuses will also hunt with groupers on a reef. Another example of interspecies cooperation are these again are the cleaner wrasses, the ones that recognize themselves in the mirror. And what they'll do is they're called cleaner fish, and they will go and basically give other fishes a spa treatment. These can be fishes like a shark that might ordinarily be prey. They might be prey to, but they have an understanding that they will go and clean their teeth and pick loose scales off them and parasites and debris, and they get a meal in that way, and the fishes get cleaned of the parasites and other debris. And parasites are pretty plentiful in the aquatic environment, so it can be very detrimental to a fish if they're not able to rid themselves of it. So it's very beneficial relationship for both of them. It's an example of mutualism. And these cleaner fish can do many clients a day, actually potentially thousands of clients a day, and they'll remember who they've served. And if, for example, if they see potential new client, that's what they call the fishes that they groom. If they see a new one, they'll be on like their best behavior, because once in a while they'll like nip at a fish and the fish chase them around. But if they know there's a potential new client, they will be on their best behavior, so to try to attract the new client. Okay, and they're not speciesist. They'll also do this with human divers. And people who dive regularly dive in a certain area, they can actually befriend fishes. They'll build resident fishes. If they get to know each other, they'll come around and they like a little bit of grooming, So also interspecies friendships with other animals. These are example of a couple dogs who have ponds in their yards, and they're not feeding the fish. It's nothing, not doing anything to, attract them, except just for the pleasure of their friendship. A wonderful book about fishes is What a Fish Knows by Jonathan Balcom. It's really a treasury of information about how interesting and amazing and admirable fishes are. Another book is called Do Fish Feel Pain? It's by Victoria Braithwaite. She was professor of fisheries and biology at Penn State University. And this book came out in 2010, and she put in layperson's terms the very compelling evidence that fish are sentient. She does answer the question towards the end of the book. Yes, fish do feel pain. And it's a really informative book showing the scientific evidence that fishes are sentient. Here's just some reasons why we know that they do feel pain. They have nervous systems similar to those of birds and mammals, including pain receptors. Their behavior indicates when they're in pain, they behave in a way that indicates that they're experiencing pain. They actually produce their own painkillers, and they quickly learn to avoid painful stimuli. Fishes can also suffer fear. I'm going to read you a little quote that Victoria Braithwaite, who wrote the book Do Fish Feel Pain, explained. She says, I have argued that there is as much evidence that fish feel pain and suffer as there is for birds and mammals, and more than there is for human neonates and preterm babies. And also a quote by John Webster. He's the past president of the British Society for Animal Science. In his book, Limping Toward Eden, which came out in 2005, he explained, a powerful portfolio of physiological and behavioral evidence now exists to support the case that fish feel pain and that this feeling matters. In the face of such evidence, any argument to the contrary based on the claim that fish do not have the right sort of brain can no longer be called scientific. It's just obstinate. Some people will say that because fish don't have a neocortex, the part of the brain where humans can detect pain, that they can't feel pain, but they have an analogous structure, telencephalon, which is how they can detect pain. So just because they have a different brain structure doesn't mean they don't have the same brain functions. And you can see that they can suffer fear, which is reason enough not to cause them needless distress. Tragically, fishes comprise the largest category of harmfully exploited vertebrate animals. They're subjected to some of the worst abuses, and they receive the least public concern or legal protection. This gives you an example of it shows you the annual global fish kill. It's between 1 and 2 trillion fishes are killed. And it's hard to really get your mind around what a trillion is. So here's just some examples. A million seconds is 11 days. A billion seconds is 31 years, and a trillion seconds is 32,000 years. So these are just astronomical figures. About half of the weight of these wild-caught fish are used for fish meal or fish oil that's mainly fed to farmed fishes or shrimps and other farmed animals. And additionally, 124 billion farmed fishes are also killed for human food. So again, these are just astronomical figures. These are the most common ways that the fishing industry uses to catch fishes. These are long lines. They're lines that go for miles with tens of thousands of hooks on them. All these methods are very inhumane and indiscriminate, catching just whoever happens to get caught on there. Another one are gill nets, where animals will get caught, their gills will get caught in the nets and they can't free themselves. And also trawling, where they have these huge, immense nets that just trawl along the bottom of the ocean, catching fishes and destroying coral reef, just whoever happens to be down there. And now they have these immense ships that go out there called floating slaughter plants, just giant ships that have refrigeration, so they can be catching these animals and processing them on the ship and freezing them. They could be out there for months or even up to a year. They have supply ships bring them supplies and take the catch back, so they can be out there for months at a time. And along with the animals that they're catching, the targeted animals are also so many incidentally caught animals, so-called bycatch. Every year, included in the bycatch are some 250,000 turtles, 100 million plus sharks, 300,000 small whales and dolphins, and also about 320,000 seabirds. So just immense numbers of animals who are being caught and thrown back dead or dying, or used for fertilizer or something like that. Okay, for shrimp fishing is especially problematic as far as bycatch goes. I have a little quote to read you, if I can find it here. But in the book Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, he explains that if you were to imagine being served a plate of sushi, but this plate also holds all the animals who were killed for your serving of sushi. That plate might have to be 5 feet across. So just for that handful of shrimp, they're also catching that many other animals, again, who are thrown back dead or dying. There are also many animals who are intentionally killed because humans don't want to be competing with them for fish. This, for example, is a cormorant. They're birds who eat fish, and because humans don't want to be competing with them, the government actually pays people to go out and shoot them. Also seals and sea lions and many other animals killed intentionally just so they won't be competing with humans for fish. And because fishing has become so intense, the aquatic species are declining. There's a report called the Living Planet Index, and in the most recent one that came out in 2022, it showed that marine life populations have declined about 50% from 1970 to 2012, and vertebrate populations declined an average of 69%. Migratory freshwater fish populations declined an average of 76%, and freshwater vertebrate populations, fishes and frogs and such, declined an average of 83%. So these are just phenomenal numbers of decreases in wildlife. And in a New York Times article in response to the most recent report, the author explained, scientists know what's causing biodiversity loss. On land, the top driver is agriculture, as people turn forests and other ecosystems into farmland for cattle or palm oil. At sea, it's fishing. And because of the increased technology, the fishing industry has been able to catch more and more fishes. The global sea catch increased starting in the 1950s with increasing technology. It peaked in 1996, and it's been decreasing ever since at a rate of about 1 million metric tons per year. So we're basically desertifying the oceans. Because it's getting harder and harder to catch these fish and having to go out further, it's costing them more for fuel and everything else. They're turning increasingly to human slavery to catch fish. It's really a huge problem. The Associated Press won the Pulitzer Prize in a report that they did on this, investigation they did that showed even when these ships, remember you showed that these ships can be out at sea for months or even up to a year. And when the ships do dock, they actually found that they went to an island and put these guys in cages, literally. So this is literal slavery going on. Environmental Justice Foundation has been reporting on it. And they take these men, they trick them into going out at sea, men and boys, and they take away their passports. They're really at the mercy if there is any of these ship captains. And there's all kinds of horrific abuses and rapes, even murder. So it's just literal slavery going on. It's especially problematic with the Asian fishing industry, but it's happening in many countries. There, in fact, was even investigation of human slavery in the Hawaiian fishing fleet. So this is a very common problem. If you're eating seafood, you may very well be eating slave-caught seafood. It's basically untraceable. So, you really have no way of knowing. And a lot of it is being sold in Europe and the United States. People are turning to aquaculture as thinking that's a solution because of the decrease in wild fishes, but it's actually a huge part of the problem. These are sea pens where these animals are kept in there. They have no way of escaping from like swarming jellyfishes or inclement weather. If you have a hurricane come through or horrific storm or freezing cold weather or whatever, they're stuck in these cages. They're so crowded in there that they are, it's just a breeding ground for disease, and they're spreading also parasites to among themselves and also to the wild populations. And because these fish are largely carnivorous fish, they're being fed wild caught. A huge proportion of the wild caught fishes are going to feed farmed fishes and farmed shrimps and other farmed animals. So rather than being a solution, it's a huge part of the problem of overfishing. These are some of the problems with aquatic aquaculture. Again, they're killing animals. For example, these birds that will come in and try to eat the fish, they'll kill them. They have to use all kinds of drugs, antibiotics, and other chemicals, parasiticides, to try to keep them alive and free of disease. And of course, that also gets spread into the water and transmitted to the wild fishes. Dead fishes, they have a very high mortality rate. So the dead fishes are decomposing in there, as is feces and uneaten food, and all that goes to the bottom and creates a dead zone down there. So it's really a huge problem. If these fish escape, and that's not uncommon, like if a predator rips a hole in the net in the netting, or if a storm comes and ruins the pen and they get out, they can compete with the wild fishes. If they interbreed with them, they can reduce their genetic fitness. So it's a huge problem. This is an example of pond fishing, which is done here in the US for catfishes, and also very common in Asia, particularly. You can see they destroy the mangroves, which are nurseries for fishes. So that's very problematic. You can see how unsanitary the water is, how crowded they are. Again, over in some of these countries, they use chemicals, drugs, and other chemicals that aren't allowed in the US. But that we're importing a huge proportion of the seafood consumed in the US is imported, about 90% of it, and very little of it is inspected. These are indoor tank fish farming. It's very consumptive of water and energy, very high in water and energy. They're trying to get these things going, but they're so prohibitively expensive. And you can see how incredibly unnatural that would be for the fishes. There's no way for them to engage in their natural behaviors of nesting or courtship. And you can imagine, especially for migratory fishes, how maddening it must be to be stuck in a tank like that. So very inhumane. Also, because of the selective breeding breeding for fast growth, it's causing all kind of deformities and fin deformities and high mortalities. That fish is actually suffering from like a spinal deformity. Also, again, the sea lice infestations can actually kill these animals and just eat their flesh down to the bone. And some of the treatments that they use to try to get rid of the parasites can actually kill the fishes. So what they're trying to do now, this is a lump sucker fish that will eat the parasites, but because they know so little about what their needs are, they have very high mortality too, amazingly high mortality. So it's exploitation on top of exploitation. Depression is known to happen among the fishes. They're called dropouts, and they're let's see if I can find that note. Here's a quote from a United Press International study on farm-raised salmon suffer from depression. Their brain chemistry and behavior are analogous to symptoms of depression documented in other animals. So they can actually be healthy in all other ways, but just start floating up, and they think it's because possibly they're just so stressed and depressed from these barren and stressful conditions. Genetic engineering, now they're trying to, well, they actually are breeding these animals. They're actually for sale in the marketplace in Canada, unlabeled, and they're supposed to start selling them here in the US. And you can see how much bigger that genetically engineered salmon is than the smaller salmon, the natural salmon. And because of the way it's also caused among them all kind of deformities and high mortality. And it's just a very inhumane way to produce fish. how they die. Fishes are not covered by the Humane Slaughter Act. They're not covered by the Animal Welfare Act. They're exempted from many, if not most, state anti-cruelty laws. So here's a quote from Fish Count. Most wild-caught fish are likely to die from being crushed in nets or from suffocation, freezing, or live dissection after landing. This process will probably take many minutes or even hours. And most of the world's farmed fish are also killed by slow and inhumane methods such as suffocation, hemorrhaging, electrocution, or by being cut up alive. In 2011, Mercy for Animals did an investigation of a catfish slaughter plant in Texas. And if you go on YouTube, you can see their results. And basically, they're just cutting these animals up fully conscious and alive. And the owner of the catfish slaughter plant, when they approached him, the media approached him about it. He said, "I don't know why they're picking on this. This is the way it's done everywhere. There's no protection for these animals." And from the book Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer explained, whether wild caught or farmed, you never have to wonder if the fish on your plate suffered. They did. There are certification schemes out there, seafood certification schemes, but most don't include fish welfare considerations. A lot of the information is conflicting from one scheme to another. A lot of it is obsolete because once they start saying this is the type of fish to eat, this is the type of species to eat, then there's a big run on those fishes and their populations start crashing. So the advice can be obsolete, and also the standards are very dubious. For example, there's an organization called Make Stewardship Count, and on their website they explain the Marine Stewardship Council label, the most recognized seafood sustainability eco label, is increasingly being awarded to fisheries that routinely catch thousands of vulnerable marine animals, discard excessive amounts of sea life as waste, irreversibly destroy seafloor habitats, and continue to catch overfished species. So really, even if fishing could be sustainable, it will never be humane. This gives an example of just how many more fishes, for example, are killed for consumption in the U.S. than other farmed animals. And again, the reason why this number is so high, these are in the millions, is because so many wild-caught fishes are used to feed farmed fishes and farmed shrimps and other farmed animals, pigs and chickens. And because lots of times you'll see a report and it will say the percentage, and it'll be much lower than it actually is because they're giving the percentage in weight rather than numbers of animals. On a wonderful website called Counting Animals by Harish Sethru, he did the calculations and showed that a vegetarian saves more than 225 fish each year because half of the fishes consumed as human food in the U.S. are farmed, and so many wild-caught fishes are caught as food for them. Okay, and also so-called recreational fishing. In the introduction, it was said that so many fishes are killed because of sport, but it's really not sport. The fish are not willing participants; they're victims. So fishing is not a sport. But it's been estimated that some 345 million saltwater fishes are caught non-commercially in the U.S. every year. And the number of freshwater fishes who are caught non-commercially is unknown, but there are about 3 times as many people who fish as hunt in the U.S. So it's a huge number. And you can just kind of, to give you a kind of an idea of what it would be like, can you imagine being hooked through your mouth, or they can be hooked through their gill, or if they swallow the hook, it's going to be in their gut and get pulled through the water by that and be suffocated and manhandled. It's just, there's nothing humane about fishing. Increasingly, because fishing has been trending downward as far as interest in fishing, now the fishing industry and the boating industry and government agencies, fish and wildlife agencies, and even police forces, they're really promoting fishing among children and women and veterans and elderly, just anyone they can get to go fishing to try to justify these agencies and to sell fishing equipment. and it's such a bizarre notion to have police, for example, trying to get kids to go fishing, because you would think that they would be trying to get them to do something nonviolent and something peaceful, but fishing is anything but nonviolent and peaceful. So what we've been doing is going to some of these fishing events, and there's so many. If you go to your local or your state wildlife fish and wildlife agency, they'll oftentimes tell you where these youth fishing derbies are. So we've been going and handing out coloring books, anti-fishing coloring books, and they've been very well received. We also have a book. One of our board members wrote a book, An Underwater Friend, Howard Edelstein. It's a wonderful book about a boy who goes fishing with his father, and they catch a fish, and then he realizes how cruel it is, and they actually end up helping the fish, and it explains to children that we should be helping animals, not harming them. And all this fish, catching all these animals and causing all this cruelty for something that's not even good for us. Fish has mercury, it's very high in mercury, dioxins, PCBs, microplastics, parasites, pathogens, antibiotics, and now very recently in the news are something called PFAS. And what they are is called a forever chemical. It's used for Teflon coating and firefighting foam, and even cosmetics. And this chemical is so common now in the US. The EPA did a study, and for all the fishes they caught had this PFAS in them, which is very detrimental to human health. Also, fish have cholesterol and saturated fat. And again, about 90% of the seafoods consumed in the US is imported, yet only about 2% is inspected. And about a third of the seafood sold in North America is mislabeled. So even if you're going by some of these certification schemes, you really don't know what the fish are getting is. Center for Science in the Public Interest, for years, they did a report called Outbreak, and they repeatedly showed that seafood had the highest level of illness per consumption of any of the food that they tracked. So it's definitely not a healthful food. Fish oil is like the most popular supplement, but it's promoted for all kinds of health problems, but it's been shown that it doesn't protect against conditions such as anxiety, depression, stroke, diabetes, or death. In fact, it might slightly increase cancer risk, particularly for prostate cancer. Studies have shown it had no protection against heart disease. And if you are taking fish oil in a gel form, in like a gel tablet, you may not even know it goes rancid. If they go rancid, it can create free radicals, which are potentially carcinogenic. So not only is it not helpful, it can actually be a health hazard. A lot of people take fish oil because they want to get omegas, but much more healthful ways to get omegas are from such foods as walnuts, flaxseed oil, flaxseed, chia seeds, hemp seeds. If you really want a concentrated dose of omegas, you can take algae supplements, which is how fishes get their algae. And a lot of foods are fortified with plant-derived omegas. For people who like seafood, there are vegan versions of virtually any kind of seafood you can imagine. These are some of just a few of the examples that are out there. There's some more. They're coming out with more and more all the time. They're investing millions of dollars being invested in producing new vegan seafood products that replicate the flavors and textures of seafood. On our website, we have a vegan seafood section that has hundreds of recipes and links to companies that make vegan seafood products. There are vegan seafood cookbooks, so anything you have a hankering for, there's a vegan version that's better for us, better for the animals, and better for the environment. Aquaria is also a huge problem. Billions of fish are used in the aquarium industry. And there's a new documentary came out about a couple years ago called The Dark Hobby that explains just how cruel wild caught it is for the wild caught fishes. They're going out and depleting these populations. They sometimes even use dynamite to blow up the coral reefs to get the fish out and catch them, or bleach. They'll squirt bleach into the coral reef to knock the fishes out and catch them. the vast majority of them die before they're even sold or within a year of having been caught. So it's another huge problem. For people who do want to have fishes and can take care of them, we recommend that they adopt them from an animal shelter or go to a rescue group or look on Craigslist or the like for someone who's trying to rehome fishes for free. But please don't support the fish industry. Experimentation is another thing. Fishes are increasingly being used for all kinds of horrific experiments because they're inexpensive. The laws oftentimes do not cover them. Again, they're not covered by the Animal Welfare Act. They reproduce quickly, and they're cheaper. So increasingly, they're being used for all
I
kinds
need a booty so fat it make me angry when I look at it, and I want to fight you.
all kinds of horrible experiments. So thank you very much for your interest and your concern for fishes. Ways that you can help fishes are learn about them, for one thing, and on our website we have all kinds of fact sheets. Again, the book What a Fish Knows is a wonderful way to learn about fishes. Also on our Facebook page, every day we go through the news and put on our Facebook page interesting articles. Oftentimes you can post a comment and response to them on our website, on our Facebook page, or preferably on the source page. Let the public know what you think. Also, you can write letters to the editor. Just let people know that fishes are sentient beings. They do feel fear and pain. They do deserve respect and compassion. Fishing is not a sport. You can also make vegan seafood meals for your friends and family, and just help get the word out. When we started Fish Feel, we were mainly trying to get through to activists, because if so many people were not, so few people were advocating for fishes at the time, that we thought if we can get activists to help spread the word, we could be much more exponentially helpful. So if you can let your friends know, we really need people. People are so unfamiliar and unaware of fishes and what's happening to them, that the more and more we can get the word out, the better, the more we can help these animals who are in such desperate need of our help. So thank you, Michelle, and thank you all very much for listening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Try to.
Thank you, Mary. You can stop your screen share, and we are going to take questions. But maybe I will start with a quick question on my own, and then we'll go to Marco, and then we'll go to John. Thank you guys for having your hands up. And if you want to ask a question, you can hit your hand raise icon, and I'll try to get to you in order. But you were talking about, rescuing fish. Are there any other ways that activists can try to rescue fish? When they go into pet stores, talking to the pet stores, or I know that I had an experience in Washington, D.C. recently where I was able to negotiate the release of a crab, and then we released him into the Chesapeake Bay, and we saved his one life, and it was so wonderful and rewarding, and he was so happy, and you helped us, figure out, what was the best steps for that. So anything else you can say about that?
Well, there are people who go, beta, beta fishes are so commonly sold in those little
Right.
tiny containers. And a lot of people think it's okay just to keep them in those containers. And it's so cruel that a lot of them are raised in Asia and shipped over here and transported in all kinds of cruel ways. And we don't recommend that people purchase them, because that's really perpetuating the trade. But if you go in and you can document it and put that online, something like that, help spread the word about how cruel it is. That's a great way to help. You can also, if you see ones that are dying, you can speak to the manager and ask if they'll let you have the fish. And sometimes, they will let you do that. There's actually a case in Florida recently where someone was posting that they were going into the dumpster behind this pet store. They didn't specify what pet store it is, and we're trying to find out what pet store it is. but this pet store is just throwing away all kinds of animals in plastic bags, and they were going in there and in the Florida heat, and so they were dumpster diving and getting these fishes out. So, if you can go into the stores and document conditions and see if there are ones that are in really bad situation, lots of times they will let you take the fish for free. And there's an organization, Phillips Fish Sanctuary, and they have very good information about how you can go about getting fishes from pet stores for free.
Great, thank you for that information. All right, so John, do you want to unmute and ask your question, and then Marco? And we can't hear you now. I can't hear you. You want to try taking your headphones off? I don't know, that will do it.
Nope.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay. First of all, Mary, I want to thank you for amazing content, although it's depressing, but it's very informative. I've heard, and I think a lot of people probably non-vegans challenging the fact that they say that in a certain number of years, if the mass fishing keeps going on, we'll deplete the oceans of fish. Is there any number on that that sounds reasonable that we can quote?
Well, there is a quote that's been going around that at the rate that fishing is happening, the rate that fish are being taken out of the water, there will be fishless oceans by 2048. But that came out in a scientific report, a scientific paper, but they retracted that because it wasn't. They really were talking about fishing it down so it wouldn't be economically viable to catch those fishes anymore. But there's no specific amount. But as I had shown in the Living Planet Index, they have shown that aquatic populations have been halved in the past 50 years. So, and again, also that the number of fishes being caught by the fishing industry is going down like a metric ton. Was it a metric ton? I forget, but metric tons every year. So the number are going down every year. There's no hard and fast number on that, but I would refer you to the Living Planet Index. It's put out by the World Wildlife Fund and the London Zoological Society. They do these reports every few years, and they're showing they take into account vertebrate animals, and they show that these populations are just going down in such amazing amounts every time they do a study. And the world is said to be going through the sixth great extinction now, so these numbers are really plummeting.
Yeah, I can't believe that the fishing industry is really, in a sense, shooting themselves in the foot by going in massive fishing. Eventually, they're going to deplete the oceans, and they're going to put themselves out of a job too.
Well, they really are. And in fact, we just posted recently on our Facebook page an article that came out in a seafood industry publication that showed that some of these big companies are fighting regulations. And there's like I don't want to say a conspiracy, but there's a whole set of people at the top that are really fighting the regulations that would, to prevent overfishing. So they really are. They're just so intent on short-term profits, Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. Okay, I'm going to go to Marco. Marco, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
All right. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mary, thanks a lot for your presentation. It's really hard to find really high quality information like this about fish, how they feel, and how to communicate that. But as far as my question, I do a lot of outreach to non-vegans, and I was wondering what your feedback is on a sort of summary script I kind of made out of your presentation. So maybe as something short to actually communicate to people, I would say I'm on the street. I can say something like, I don't want to take out too much of your time, knowing you probably just want to enjoy the rest of your night. So I'll just ask, if you knew that divers who don't even feed fish can still develop a friendship with those fish, and fish even mentally recognize themselves in the mirror, if you knew that, would you still pay for them to swim in their own waste in a fish farm, or just slowly be crushed to death in a massive fishing net? Just that would be the question, and I'm wondering your feedback on that sort of summary.
Yeah, well, I think those are excellent points to make. I think the biggest thing we really need to get over with the public is understanding that fish are sentient. There's like been a cultural conspiracy against people understanding that fish do feel fear and pain. But there's been so many studies over the past few decades showing the really compelling, overwhelming evidence that fish are sentient, that they do feel fear and pain. So first thing people really need to realize is that studies have shown that they are sentient. There's books showing that they are sentient, and that really the consensus of the scientists who study this issue are that fishes feel pain. And we do have a fish sentience fact sheet that really spells it out. But I would say when you realize that these animals are sentient, that they do feel fear and pain, and that they're killed in all kinds of horrifically cruel ways, and that we don't need to be eating them, all the nutrients that we get from fish and from other animals we can easily get from plant sources, why harm animals if we don't need to?
Right. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Great. Thank you for your question, Marco. I'm going to go to a question in the chat, Mary, from Robert. What is the best current info regarding fish nets as a source of ocean plastic pollution?
Okay. Fishing gear in general is said to comprise about 10% of the plastic marine pollution that is out there. So it's a huge amount of pollution. And it's the worst plastic pollution because, for one thing, it continues catching animals. There's so much ghost fishing where these nets either are lost or abandoned, just floating around out there, and they continue trapping and catching and killing animals. And fishing gear has been fishing line and fishing nets, plastic fishing gear can take hundreds of years to break down. So it's some of the most non-biodegradable plastic out there. And when this plastic does break down, fishing gear or any other kind of plastic, it turns into microplastic. And it's been shown that aquatic animals are ingesting these microplastics as they're breathing through their mouth and also through their gills, and it becomes incorporated into their flesh. So people who are eating aquatic animals are also eating this microplastic, which, as you know, is not good for you either. So plastic is a huge problem, and fishing gear is the worst.
Okay, so great information, depressing information, good information though. Does anybody else have a question? Raise your hand if anybody else has a question, surely. Regarding fishes, regarding activism. Any other questions? I know Mary covered like an astronomical, very thorough amount, so much to digest, for all of us, so that we can go out there and be effective advocates for fishes, which is our goal. So any other questions?
It is a lot of information, and the problem is there are so many problems. affecting fishes. So I would advise people, if they would like to learn more, and we certainly hope they would, check out our Facebook, our website. Check out our website. We have fact sheets on there, and we have all kinds of information on there. And also, if you're on Facebook, check out our Facebook page. Like I said, every day we're posting information from the news and interesting stories also about fishes, interesting tidbits about them, fishes and other animals, and things you can do, petitions and such. And it's just a great way to learn about these animals and how you can help them.
I don't know if you can, I know that whales are mammals, but do you have any updated information about Lolita, who was, right, the killer whale who's being freed soon from the Miami aquarium? Is that right?
I believe so, yes. That's been in the news recently. Apparently it's going to take a lot to get the permits or whatever to get her freed. So it really remains to be seen. Certainly hopeful, but I'm not holding my breath on it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand you might be a little skeptical given the history of humans. And okay, great. Charles, you have a question. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. I was just wondering whether we have a job to do actually advocating to other activists, because it seems to me that fish kind of get left out of the equation a lot of the time with animal activism. And considering that they suffer so much, like arguably it's the worst, or the biggest amount of suffering. I feel like we should be doing more. We should kind of promote activism on behalf of fish more than we do. And have you felt as an activist yourself that that's been an issue sometimes, that like fish have got kind of pushed to one side in favor of land animals like cows, sheep, chickens and things? Not that they obviously they need advocating for, but
Sure. Yes. In fact, it's really why we started the organization. I've been dealing with farmed animal issues for a couple of decades, and I myself was very neglectful about aquatic animals and fishes in particular. And I really just got so tired of hearing people saying the number of animals who are used for food, and they weren't even including fishes and other aquatic animals, though they are by far the greatest number of animals used for food. Even the animal protection community was being so speciesist against fishes. So that's why we started. And yes, if we can get other activists to increase their advocacy for fishes, and other animal protection organizations also, really get after them and get them to increase their advocacy for fishes. It's happening more and more. The last maybe 5 or 10 years, they are starting to do more. A lot of it is in the form of welfare, trying to improve conditions for farmed fishes, especially. But that's a really, I mean, if we consider the way that other farmed animals are being treated, and for example, how difficult it is to well, I'm not going to say humanely slaughter because there's no such thing as it, but to even effectively slaughter, say, chickens, that's a very difficult thing to do, and it's really not happening. These birds are being stunned, but they're not unconscious. They're being slaughtered while they're still fully conscious. And you can imagine with aquatic animals, it's even harder. So, I'm glad that there are organizations that are trying to improve, at least get these animals covered by the law, slaughter laws, humane slaughter laws. So I'm glad they're doing that, but I'm not real hopeful that, they're going to be able to do that. And now they're trying to also factory farm octopuses. So there's a big push against that, including by scientists, which is good. At least we have scientists speaking out against that. They're trying to nip that in the bud, which hopefully will happen. But yes, we really need to get more activists to be advocating, including fishes in their advocacy, and also animal protection organizations. A really good film that kind of addressed that is Seaspiracy. So I hope everybody will watch Seaspiracy. It's an excellent documentary. It got a lot of criticism, but the criticism was largely wrong or very trivial. It's a really wonderful documentary, and it's, it can be tough to watch. There's a lot of graphic stuff, but it's it's done in such a wonderful way that it's very watchable film.
Yeah, it almost feels as if we should be leading with like advocacy for fish, because so many people kind of take refuge in eating fish. They say, "Oh, I don't eat red meat anymore," you know, but they still eat fish. You know, there's so many pescatarians that they feel like in some way it's better and less harmful. And if you could, I guess, to kind of take that away from them right from the start, then you might have more people just becoming completely vegan.
Yes, and really by eating fish, I think it's really the worst animals you can eat, because they're smaller, they tend to be smaller. And if you're eating wild caught ones, you're also, so many other animals are being caught and killed with them. And farmed ones are kept in these conditions longer than any other farmed animals, or longer than most farmed animals. It takes like 2 years to get a salmon to market weight. So they're, in the meantime, they're in these horrific conditions. It's really, I think you're right. We should really be starting with trying to encourage people to stop eating fish, and also to stop fishing. You know, people seem to think this harmless activity. You know, that you see these commercials for stress relief drugs, and the way they're doing it is they're out there fishing. But you know, there's nothing harmless about it. It's such a cruel thing to do. It's a animal abuse, and even, you know, the so-called catch and release. Just because these animals are getting put back into the water doesn't mean they're surviving. Many of them don't survive, and they're all suffering from it. But you know, it's presented as a sport, but there's nothing sporting about it. It's legalized animal abuse. You know, dog fighting and cockfighting used to also be considered sports, but it's not sport. It's animal abuse, and it's so common.
Great. Well, thanks again for the presentation. It was great, and I've got lots of reading to catch up on now. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for your question. So any other questions? I don't know, while we're waiting for maybe another question or so, Mary, anything else you can say about Fish Feel in terms of current campaigns or past wins? And I think you mean like how people can support the organization.
Sure. Well, the outdoor activity season is starting up now, Veg Fest. So we try to go to as many as we can. We go to tabling there, and also now is the season for so many of these youth fishing contests. So it'd be great. You can actually go on our website. We have a kids page, and you can print out the coloring books. Or if you get in touch with us, we can send you them. We also have brochures if you want to. Leaflet, we have brochures you can use, and fact sheets, so we'd be, you know, happy to help get you supplied with them. And I would really suggest checking out the website for materials, and there's videos on there, and an art section, people with poetry and stories. And we also have a page called Your Page, where people explain how they came to respect fishes, and a lot of these people are people who used to fish, so it's very helpful for people to realize that, you know, even people who used to fish can have realized how cruel it is and now are opposed to it. And if people want to share their story, we'd love to include that also.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to just kind of share, if you have done some actions for fishes, what were those? You can share in the chat, or you can raise your hand and share about those. And just remember that Mary is here as a resource, probably the main resource. I don't know any other, like you said, you're the first and certainly the biggest, I guess, you know, at this point. So
yes, and if anyone has questions, or if they want to share their story, we'd love to also put that on our Facebook page. And it's very people love to read those stories, and it also encourages other people to share their stories. And if anyone has any questions or needs any help or wants to get started with anything, you can send your comment to info@fishfeel.org, and we'll be more than happy to try to help you.
awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, George, you can unmute and ask your question.
I don't have a question, but Lynn Mannheim has had her hand up for quite a while. I don't know if she knows how to activate the icon, but she
Oh,
hasn't. done
that's
so.
why I haven't seen her. Thank you for letting me know. Lynn, there you have your real hand up. Go ahead. Sorry about that, Lynn. Go ahead and answer.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much. Well, my one experience with rescuing a fish, I went out onto a fishing dock and people were fishing out there and they had some live, well, at least one live fish in a sink, gasping, of course. And I picked it up and I threw it back in the water. Oh boy, did I get hell for that. But I was very happy to have done it. And I have a question. Do you think that that animal would have survived? I have no idea whether that fish lived or could have lived after being in that sink for a while.
Yeah, well, it would depend on how stressed they were when they caught them, and the type of species also matters. With some of these, it probably wasn't a deep sea species, but with the deep sea species, just the pressure differential can force their swim bladder out and their organs out. It's called barotrauma, and that's very difficult for a fish to survive that. But it would really depend on how long they've been out of the water, how much stress they've been through, what the conditions in the water are like, where the injury was. Just hooking them by the mouth. A lot of fish, the way they eat is by suction. So if they get a hold, that's going to impact how well they can then eat. So yeah. But thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And Lynn, if you want to send us your story, we'd love to post it. Yeah.
Well, this is why I can't go to the vigils, the save vigils. I don't know if you know about them, Mary. You do, because I would be there, trying to pull the animals out of there. I can't go because I can't stand there and see it happening. It will not happen in front of me. So I just have to stay away.
Well, and there's so many ways, so many forms of activism that, you pick the one that you're comfortable with, the one you feel most comfortable with, the one you think you can do the most good at. There's so many ways you can help animals. As far as demos or demonstrations are good if you're comfortable with that. Otherwise, writing a letter to the editor, if you get a letter in the paper, might reach a lot more people that way, and you can compose your thoughts and put them into a good presentation. So, you don't have to do all kinds of forms of activism.
I do a lot of activism. So
good. Okay, great.
Yeah, great. I mean, Lynn mentioned, was that fish going to be okay? I was wondering the same thing when I released the crab. Fortunately, there was a sign right there at the water's edge that said no crabbing, no fishing. And so I think we released him, gave him the best possible chance. And he certainly, it was the most amazing sight that he just flung himself off the pier and climbed down and just sprung to life. He was sort of shut down from being in that terrible metal pan with all the other crabs. And as soon as he heard and smelled the water, that's all the proof I ever need that they're sentient, that they're thinking, that they're, that they're self-aware. So did I miss anybody for questions? If I do, I apologize, but go ahead and put them again in the chat or let me know if someone else's hand is raised. Now, Mary, do you have any hope of the laws changing? Is there anything more we can do? Or have there been any recent laws changed in regard to fishes? Or are there petitions, other things we can do?
Yeah, well, in the US, it's pretty dismal. A lot of states don't even recognize fish as being animals. So, if we can get our state laws to at least acknowledge that they are animals and get them protected through the state law, that's great. In the UK, for example, they are recognized as being sentient. So it certainly wouldn't be precedent setting. There are other examples, and there's so much fantastic scientific evidence showing that these animals are sentient beings, that the science is on our side. The scientists who study these animals, really are very supportive of it too. So they're a good source. And there's, again, the book What a Fish Knows has so much great information, and check out our website. There's so much great information on our side that it certainly should be covered. And the American Veterinary Medical Association acknowledges that fish are sentient, and even the fish industry a lot of fish industry spokespeople acknowledge that fish are sentient. So, it really come off as being ignorant of fact if you're going to try to argue that fish aren't sentient. So if we can start pushing to get them covered by laws, that would be great. Sure. Just in the UK recently, they acknowledged that crustaceans are sentient. So, yeah.
Of course, great. Yeah,
And
I'm wondering, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, some countries, it's against the law, for example, to boil lobsters alive. So, there are precedents out there that we can point to.
Do other countries have pet stores the way that we have in this country? Are they, because they're everywhere here? I don't really know.
Yeah, I'm sure most countries, if not all of them, do. But like, just for example, when you mentioned that, I think of one of the biggest aquarium supply companies in France stopped producing fish bowls because they were so inhumane. So they just stopped producing them. Yeah.
That leads me to what I was just going to ask you with, if anyone here or anyone that we know does manage to rescue a fish, whether it's from a fish market or whether it's from a pet store, in terms of, there's nothing to replace or duplicate their natural habitat, of course, but is there any tips that you have for setting up an environment that they can live in, thrive in, maybe?
Yes, well, it's going to, of course, depend on the species and all, but there's a lot of great information out on the web. There's Aquatic Veterinary Services is a veterinarian in California, and they have a wonderful website about how to care humanely for different species of fishes. And there's also a Facebook group page called Vegans with Fishes, and they're very knowledgeable. They post all kinds. You can ask questions there, and they post all kind of great information.
Okay, good. I was hoping you would mention Vegans with Fishes. I was thinking of them. I knew they came up when we were in DC. We were talking about that. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that came up in DC. I think we've kind of covered a lot of that anything that we haven't covered. So is there any other? So, I mean, people were asking, obviously people can get this video. It will be uploaded. I'm telling everybody again on our YouTube channel. Just search for Animal Activism Mentorship on YouTube and make sure you subscribe to our channel. But people were asking for the slides. Is that something that you can provide for people, or is that not possible because they can look over the information again?
Oh, sure. If
Yeah.
you send a request to info@fishfield.org, we could send it to you, sure.
Okay. So it's info@fishfield.org.
Yes. .org.
Info@fish. That's easy. That's easy. All right. So if we don't have any other questions, then we're going to wrap up. I don't see any other questions. So nice to have everybody here today. So Mary, do you have any sort of parting words, final words? Like I said, I always ask words of hope. Let's end on a hopeful note, given that there's a lot of sadness that comes up around our helplessness and powerlessness that we feel when we hear all this information. But what words of hope can you offer?
Yes. Well, I would say that, we are continually learning more and more about fishes, and word is getting out about how amazing and interesting and admirable they are. And just something like this is so helpful, and we've been doing presentations, and there certainly is increasing public interest in fishes, and there's also increasing concern about how they're being treated and how their populations are suffering. And I think a great example is vegan seafood is so increasing in popularity now. Even in mainstream supermarkets, you can get, for example, one called Good Catch Seafood is a vegan seafood product that's readily available. And more stores are carrying these vegan seafood products. So I think, if we can let our friends and families know how delicious they are, how much better for us they are, how much better for the animals and the environment. I think the main thing is just to try to get the word out. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I hope that inspires people. If you haven't yet ever organized an action for fishes, do it. Now is the time. I know we were saying that today is May 4th, and it's actually International Respect for Chickens Day. And here we are talking about fishes, and we love chickens too, of course. But we were saying we need an international, or is there one, an International Day for Respect for Fishes Day?
Yes, there are actually a couple different, there's a World Day for the End of Fishing that usually happens in
Right.
towards the end of March. And that's an international event, and that's been observed in like 80 countries, and people have come up with all kind of creative ways to advocate for fishes. And also there is International Day of Respect for Fishes. In Defense of Animals was spearheading that, and there's some 250 organizations that were participating. They were doing that in August. I don't know if they're going to do it again this year, but we're going to be in touch with them and see if indeed, they will continue doing that, or we'll help them with that also. But really, of course, every day should be International Respect for All Animals Day. So, yeah.
And who made those wonderful signs behind you? Did you make those?
No, there's an artist in New York. Her name's Irene.
I thought I
Ippolito.
recognized them. Yeah. From the New York Animal Rights March. Same.
Yes.
Yeah.
She did these and so many other wonderful animal rights signs. She's just and she doesn't even consider herself an artist, but she's a terrific artist. There's octopus and fish, and she gave us about a dozen of them. And she's done all kinds of farmed animals, and also she's really, and wildlife. She's just an amazing artist.
Nice. Good shout out for her. So thank you so much.
I would just say one more
Very-
thing, if I can
Go
show
ahead.
you. I'm wearing our t-shirt. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we also have those. So if people would be interested in them, just send us and we'll let you know how you can get it. One of those.
Should they just go on your website, or should they email you?
You can go on the
Is your
website.
merch on the website?
Yes, there's a shop button on there, and at the Veg Fest and other outdoor events, we also offer them. So, yeah.
All right, awesome. So don't go anywhere, everyone. I'm going to have a few closing words, but let's, praise Mary in the chat, what you liked about this workshop, what you're taking away, what you want to remember and apply, and maybe what you want to see in the future from Mary again, perhaps, or in other topics. And maybe just a little round of applause there, which is good. And let me now wrap it up. Thank you, Peter. Let me wrap it up with some AAM announcements. So hold on and hang in another moment. Wow, because you want to hear about our upcoming workshops, don't you? Yes. So we have regular workshops, and on May 11th is our next workshop, which is Ending Horse Racing with the Nonprofit Horse Racing Wrongs. On June 2nd, we have Ending Speciesism, the History, Future, and Power of the AR Movement with James Mason, the author, on June 8th, that is. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's June 2nd. On June 8th, we have The Humane Hoax, How to Expose Happy Meat, Humane Dairy, and Ethical Eggs with Hope Bohanec, author Hope Bohanec. And on June 15th, we have You Can Teach an Old Dog New Tricks, Going Vegan Later in Life with Eric Lindstrom, Director of Farm. And, we'll have more workshops to be announced. And again, please check out our previous workshops. They're all on our YouTube channel. And while you're there, subscribe. I also want to announce our 2023 live events. The Colorado Convergence is taking place in and around Denver. The dates are June 24th through July 1st. The Portland, Oregon Convergence is August 4th through the 12th. And the Ohio Occurrence is September 1st through 3rd in and around Cincinnati. So these are our big, large-scale live events with back-to-back activism organized by AAM and also locals in those particular cities that spearhead the organizing. And so no experience is required, but registration is required. So you'll find the events on our Facebook page and on our website. Or you can always reach out to me. And if you want to put your Instagram handle in the chat, you're welcome to do that. And also, please consider becoming a patron by finding AAM on Patreon. Your donations allow AAM to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. And that wraps up another AAM workshop. Thank you, Mary, again for your time and wisdom. Thank you all for being here and the tireless work you're doing for the animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or mentee or want to get involved, please reach out to us. If you'd like to be on our email newsletter list, please drop your email in the chat and we'll add you. But until next time, everyone, stay strong and live vegan, everyone. Thank you.